The Federal Trade Commission estimates that 2 out of 5 plants purchased by consumers will die within 1 year. Now that may be pretty good news for growers, but for the consumer it might get kind of expensive. And plants really do make a nice gift for any time of year. And today we're going to talk about some new varieties with Dr. John Dole, who's been with us on Oklahoma Gardening before. And Dr. Dole, welcome back again. This is one of your research greenhouses that we're in, right?
Yes, the OSU campus at Stillwater.
Okay. And what is your research project that you're trying to do here?
We've got several projects in this particular greenhouse. We're working with water quality, trying to find a way to reduce the amount of fertilizer that it takes to grow a good quality plant, as well as reduce the amount of fertilizer that comes out of the bottom and is wasted. We're also working on how to grow plants that are tight and compact by the use of chemicals that keep them shorter and compact.
Okay. And you've also got some new varieties in here this year too, don't you? And that's what we've got here that we'd like to talk about. Why don't we point out just some of the new varieties, and then we'll talk about how to take care of the poinsettias.
Okay. Why don't we start with this one in the back here. This one is called Celebrate, Ecky's Point Celebrate. The red is by far the most common poinsettia, and so this is another one of the red types. It has very large bracts and tends to make a big, big display. We compare that with another new variety, which is called Supjabi, and you notice that the bracts on the Celebrate here have a lot of points or lobes to the bracts, whereas with the Supjabi we have a rounded, different bract shape. If you take a look at the poinsettias in the store, you'd be surprised just how different the poinsettias are.
Now this one's more common though, isn't it, with the smoother margins?
Well, they both are relatively new. They're,
okay.
But yeah, you'll probably see this type more than the Celebrate.
Okay.
And then one of the really new ones is called Lemon Drop, just released within the last couple years. This one has a yellow to creamy yellow bract. We want to compare it with this one in the back here, which is more white. We can see a little bit of the yellow color coming through.
Now, Dr. Dole, something I found interesting, when we saw some of the promotional material, it seemed to be a lot brighter yellow, and you were telling me that the temperature has a lot to do with that.
Yes, we've had an exceptionally warm fall, so consequently the poinsettias have not gotten as dark a color. Now, luckily with this latest, with the cold weather coming, the color on the poinsettias will be getting much darker. So we expect that these yellow poinsettias to get more yellow within the next few weeks.
Okay. And we've got which variety there?
This one is called V14 Marble. What's different about this one, it's pretty much a white with a little bit of pink in the center. This one is a little bit later than the others, so it will fill out a lot more. We should have a lot more color within the next week or two.
Okay.
And then another new one is called Pink Peppermint. This one's receiving a lot of attention. A lot of people are excited about it. It is a pale pink with tiny red flecks in it. Also, it has kind of a golden undercast to the pink. That is in contrast to the standard pink that's been on the market for several years. This one is V14 Pink, which has, you can see, a very strong, very clear pink color.
Well, while we're talking about varieties, I know you've got one behind you that is an example of how they come up with new colors and new varieties, I guess. Why don't you tell us about that and what happened there?
Okay. Poinsettias tend to mutate fairly commonly. We can see a pink poinsettia like this other pink over here. This pink one has produced a red shoot. That is the regular red color that we associate with the poinsettia. Breeders and propagators will look for these mutations to see if they can develop a new poinsettia from that. This can then be grown on separately to develop a new plant.
And they would just take a cutting of that? Is that basically how they would do it?
That's right. They would take a cutting of this and root it and start it.
Okay. What about growing poinsettias commercially? You take cuttings at one time and then you your temperature and light all plays. Tell us just briefly about the time of year that you started growing these.
These poinsettias were started in May.
Okay.
And most growers will get their stock plants, that is the plants that they grow to produce the cuttings. They'll get those March, April, May, late spring in other words. Then they'll grow the stock plants through the summer, take the cuttings in August and September, and those will become the Christmas crop that we buy. Now some growers just buy in the cuttings from big companies that produce them.
Right. And then to get the actual flower bracts, it has a lot to do with temperature like we talked about, but also light intensity. What is the difference of those two and what makes them really flower for us?
Poinsettias are considered short day plants. A lot of plants will flower in the fall because the day length gets shorter and shorter. So the plant is triggered into starting to flower before the winter comes. Well, the poinsettia is the same sort of plant. Even though it comes from tropical Mexico and Guatemala, it too flowers at the end of the summer and in the fall. So the shorter days and the longer nights that we get at the end of September on through December are what cause the poinsettias to flower.
Okay, so if a consumer purchases one of these for a gift, what do they need to do when they take it home? I mean, what environment do they need to have it in?
Okay. Remembering that they are a tropical plant, they like it warm but not hot. So most houses provide pretty much the right environment. So keeping it in a spot that's not too cold but not too warm.
Okay.
One common problem is to take these beautiful poinsettias and put them where they'll be most obvious, and that's on the television set.
All right, where a lot of heat's generated.
And they'll lose their leaves and look pretty bad quickly.
And humidity is a big problem in our homes here during the winter too. Is misting them or setting them on a tray of rocks where moisture will evaporate, is that really a good thing to try to prolong the...
Putting them on a tray of rocks to increase the moisture is a good idea. Also, the other way to increase the humidity around a poinsettia is if you have some house plants. Maybe make an arrangement in a corner with some of your foliage plants and stick the poinsettia in the middle.
But misting, really, you'd have to stand there and do it all day, really, to get any kind of benefit, wouldn't you?
Misting is very temporary and more hassle than it's really worth.
Another thing that's interesting I find on poinsettias, too, the colorful part is really not the flower, is it?
No, it's not the flower. The actual flower is the little tiny, shows up nice on this red one here. Is the little tiny yellow flowers in the middle. And you can see with some of them that they'll have pollen and that can get on you, for example.
So really the colorful part is just a leaf that's turned that color, is that right?
Yes, it's very similar to the leaves down below. It's just they have a different color pigment in them.
Also, I want to mention, and we didn't bring one with us, but there is a new fact sheet now at the Extension Service on growing poinsettias, and I think it alludes to a lot of the things you've talked about, and maybe we'll give some ideas on how to hold them over and get them to flower next year too. Well, the poinsettia is the traditional flower this time of year, but we've brought along some other things that we want to show you that are being sold now at the different florist shops and of course different discount stores as well. Let's talk about the gloxinia there.
This crop is not as common as it used to be. They can be beautiful. They have a beautiful velvety flower, which can be red, white, or purple. Lush, velvety foliage, which can make a beautiful plant for Christmas and a little bit different, something different than the poinsettia.
And then, of course, we've got the Norfolk Island pine over here, and they've just added a few decorations and bows and decorated it up a little bit. And we've also got, what is this one here?
That's called a cyclamen. Again, it's another crop that used to be grown a lot more. This particular one happens to be purple. There are some striking red ones that are more commonly seen closer to Christmas. They like it cool. If you put them in a cool room or next to a cool, shady window, they'll bloom for a very long time.
Would that be the same with the gloxinia too, as far as the conditions? Would they be similar?
Yes, but gloxinia likes it just a touch warmer.
Okay, how about light? A little bit more light for either one of those, or?
All of these Christmas plants do well with bright light, but not in the direct sun.
Okay.
The direct sun will heat them up too much.
So they really need to think which window and which side of the house it's on and that kind of thing too, because the different changes in light will have a big part to play in this. The last one we have is really an interesting one there. They've got a couple of baskets tied together and decorated it as well. And these are two plants that a lot of us think of as outdoor plants, an azalea, which is an indigo azalea, and then we've got a pine here that's called an Italian stone pine, and you referred to it as another...
Another name for it is the Swiss mountain pine.
Okay, and they've just decorated those up. What's probably the biggest question that we'll get after the season is, can those be planted outside?
No, neither of these plants are winter hardy here in Oklahoma. Other azaleas are, and obviously other types of pines are, but not these particular ones.
And probably another thing that affects them just as much as the hot, dry summers that we have, and dry soil and a lot of wind scorch too.
Especially with the azalea.
Would those require more light indoors though to really grow those successfully?
Well, the Swiss mountain pine, yes, if you wanted to try to keep it going for longer. The azalea just tends to last a certain amount of time anyway, like a poinsettia. So the same conditions would hold for the azalea.
Okay.
Bright but cool.
Bright but cool, okay. And probably the #1 killer of all of these plants is watering. What suggestions do you have for the homeowner on how to water these?
Okay, yeah. Plants tend to get either overwatered way too far, or people forget about them altogether. The rule of thumb I try to tell people is to stick your finger in the bottom of the pot here, and if it feels moist, then wait and try it again in a day or two. Then when it's dry, give it a water.
Okay. And once they water them, a lot of these maybe are in containers and stuff where the water is going to stand at the bottom as they water it through. Should they try to poke holes in the bottom or pull them out of the wrapper so they can get that water away from the bottom?
Depends on how much you're putting in there.
Okay.
You don't want them to sit in water for a long period of time.
Okay.
So if you see that your plant has been sitting in here, you may want to drain it out.
Okay. Well, you know, we go to a lot of trouble to select the right plant, and there's so many to choose from this year, and we get in a hurry, and sometimes we may even buy it on the spur of the moment when we're grocery shopping. But there's really an important thing that we need to do, depending on the temperature outside, to get it home where it will be in good shape. And that's protect it from the different temperatures outside. Today it's a bright, sunny, hot day. And if we took this and put it in our car and put it in the front seat where the sun's going in, stop by another store, we're going to be in trouble. What kind of problems can we get in with doing that?
Well, it'll overheat. It may get a bit of sun scorch. It may wilt before you get it home and can get it watered. In general, you may, like with a poinsettia in that situation, you may end up losing some of this nice green foliage at the bottom.
Right, so they want to maybe set it in the floorboard or keep it out of that sunlight coming into the car. And then, of course, there's the opposite of that on those days that's very cold and windy, and most of the stores will provide us with a sleeve. And if you'll start putting that on one so we can see how that's done, I'll also start some of these just to show some of the things that people can do. The sleeve is something that you can get at a lot of the florist shops, and once they've done that and got it home, a lot of people have questions on how to take it out. And you were saying if it's really tight and the foliage could get bent, just rip it. Otherwise, you can push it up and save it for later.
Yes.
If your florist doesn't have any kind of sleeve like this, you can use a paper sack or even just a regular plastic bag that they provide. And you want to make sure that you get some kind of protection, though, because the chilling temperatures and the cold winds are really going to cause what? Leaf drop again?
Yes. The one thing I hear very commonly is, I took my poinsettia home and it lost all its leaves. The cold temperatures will cause the lower leaves to fall off. The poinsettia, as I mentioned before, is a tropical plant.
Right.
So when the temperature gets below 55 outside, it should be protected.
So that's why it's real important to ask for, you know, any kind of protective covering when you're taking it home. And remember, once you get it home, that it's put in the right environment as well. Well, Dr. Dole, I appreciate you coming back again. This answers a lot of questions, I'm sure, for the homeowners. And I think we're running out of time, and we want to be sure and wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays here from us at Oklahoma Gardening, and hope you'll join us again next week.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.